Well, I never got an answer for this. In approximately 2 decades of my software development career, whenever I asked this question, what is the meaning of object oriented programming? I never got an answer from a programmer's perspective. I always got an answer related to inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism. Everybody said about object oriented programming in the same way. But if you don't know, you will be surprised to know that these things are not object oriented programming. These things are byproduct of object oriented programming. And in this video, I'm going to tell you what is the exact meaning of object oriented programming and why people have created the same. Now, before I go ahead and talk about it, a very serious disclaimer. Whatever I'm going to tell you right now, don't use it in your interviews because interviewers can be dumb too. So, whatever I'm going to tell you is not for interviews, it's for you to understand the object oriented programming and maybe to become a better programmer. Because if you understand the true purpose and meaning of object oriented programming, you will write your code in a better way. Now, each and every program, no matter which programming language is used to write the program, contains only two things. Each and every program contains only two things. What are these two things? Data and functions which acts on this particular data. There is nothing else in your source code. There is nothing else in your program. It's all about data and functions which acts on data. Now, during the days of procedural programming, we used to write data in some other place, functions in some other place, and things could be scattered around. We could use any data in any functions. We can pass data and functions around without any strict rules. And when the program size started growing, it was very difficult to understand where this data was, what is the purpose of data, and which function the data is being used. And believe me, when the code grows beyond 1000, 2000, 10,000 lines of code, it is very difficult to create a relationship as well as maintain that between data and functions. At that point of time, people were thinking about it would be better to combine these things. There were some effort in combining the data by creating something called structs in C language, but functions were still scattered around. So the idea of object came into picture. But before I go ahead and talk about object, let me tell you the definition of object. You may not find this definition, but this is the actual definition of object, and this is the definition which goes beyond software development and programming. Any noun is an object. Anything which can be represented as a noun is an object. Anything which can be represented by a name is an object. I am an object. Everything around this place is an object. My iPad is an object. This bench is an object. This shelter is an object. This whole universe is an object. Earth is an object. Galaxy is an object. And everything you can identify by a name is an object. And every object has two things. First, its characteristics, which helps us to identify the object. I'm sitting here talking to all of you, and you can identify me based on some of the characteristics, like how I look, how I speak. These characteristics uniquely identifies me. Similarly, each and everything which you can identify by a name has some characteristics by which you can identify that this name belongs to this entity or person. And the second thing that is there in every object is behavior. Characteristics is one thing, behavior is another thing. Characteristics means what I will use to identify them, but each and every object has a behavior. Just think about it. No object is stationary or static. Even the universe is not static, expanding, right? Galaxies moving, planets revolving. As an object myself, I am recording video, I am doing programming, I am walking, running, right? You may be thinking that this stool may be, as a static object with just characteristics. No, it has its own behavior. We can sit in a different way in this particular, bench. So coming back to our object-oriented programming, the concept of object came into picture where we can combine the characteristics and behavior in a one place so that it's easy to maintain. Yes, it's easy to maintain and understand by programmers, which are nothing but human beings. Believe me, there is nothing special which you can do in object-oriented programming and can't do in procedural programming. At the machine level, it's just set of instructions. It doesn't matter whether the instructions are coming from object-oriented programming or any other programming paradigm. You can do pretty much every other thing with any other programming language. Okay, so the idea behind object is to combine the characteristics and behavior by creating an object and identity of a set of code. So if I'm creating some data, for example employee data, we can create an object because the data associated with employee, the characteristics as well as the behavior or functions which acts on this data of employee, we can club together in an object. Okay, so the idea is to maintain things. The idea is to maintain things, combine things in a better way so that we as a human being, we as a programmer, we don't end up confusing ourselves. And as a result, we maybe end up creating better code, better software, better programs. And that is the idea behind object oriented programming. Of course, these things like inheritance, composition, polymorphism, abstraction, these all things were not the idea behind object-oriented programming. These things created as a byproduct of object-oriented programming. That doesn't mean that you cannot associate these things like inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction with object-oriented programming. They are tightly coupled. But the reason why I'm creating this video because I wanted to tell you the exact meaning why we create objects. I have seen programmers going ahead and creating objects without understanding what is the purpose of this. Why are we combining these data and functions together? I do believe that after listening to me, you have better understanding of why we do that. I hope and believe that this video was helpful to all of you. Thank you all. Thanks for watching. We will definitely meet again. Until the next time we meet, good day, goodbye. You take care.